a wee bit of a nightmare there, guys. But guys, I just want to give you a wee quick update on if you are aware, we put in a police complaint about the Scottish Government sex questionnaire for children in Scotland with inappropriate questions. Well, I wanted to focus on that, guys. I'm not going to go right into this sex education, but if you have got children in Scotland, this is a serious safeguarding issue, and it's not a joke. I'm going to give you a quick rundown and try and be quick tonight on this, guys, right? But a quick rundown of what we know so far about the global sex education programme in Scotland. I want to focus on the questionnaire that the Scottish Government have issued for your 14-year-olds. It's for younger than that, it's for 12-year-olds. But there's also one for primary 5s, 6s and 7s. The Scottish Government are profiling your children, right? They're gathering information and data about every single aspect of your child's life. And part of this is sexualisation of your children, and they're going to gather data for research purposes. And I'm going to try and tell you a wee bit more about that, guys, right? Just briefly, because I really don't want to get into it tonight. I just need to do a wee update for our YouTube channel. And rather than screen recording a video, I thought I would just go live. So I'm going to try and be as quick as possible. Right, so this sex education programme brought in by the Scottish Government is created by paedophiles. I'm going to mince my words. It's created by paedophiles. If you do your own research, you'll find exactly the same thing. I'll give you the tools to research, guys. It does give me the option to spin the camera around. So I don't know if some of the documents, I'll just spin the camera and you can screenshot them. So quickly, I'll give you a wee brief rundown, right? So the sex education programme is global. It's not just in Scotland. It's also been brought in England and Wales and Ireland under a different name. It's Rshp in Wales. The Welsh are currently taking their government to court because there's massive safeguarding issues and it fails to protect vulnerable children. It actually exploits children. It's sexual exploitation by your governments, and they're getting away with it. So we went into lockdown 2 years ago. While we were on lockdown, the Scottish Government created a sex education programme. It was already there. It's already been there for years, guys. But they built the structure of it. They made policies and framework, and they created the health and wellbeing curriculum. So they created the online health and wellbeing curriculum, and in that curriculum it's broken into 8 sections in Scotland, and 8 of the sections... What is going on, man? Do we need to block people already? Right, this is about exploitation of children, so just get yourself off of there, whoever that is. I want to go in and block them when I'm done. So, it's part of the Global 2030 agenda, right? Part of the Global 2030 agenda is sexualisation of all children. In 2009, all the governments signed documents with the United Nations and agreed for this global sex education programme to be brought into schools by 2022. For God's sake, man. What a bunch of... Honestly, I hate YouTube for this. Right, so how do we remove... There we go. Sorted. Honestly, there's something wrong with people. So it's part of the Global 2030 agenda, and part of that is sexualisation of all children. So this sex education programme is under the health and wellbeing curriculum in Scotland. That is what the sex survey that's just been issued by the Scottish Government is under. It's under the health and wellbeing curriculum and part of relationship, sexual health and parenthood. As I said, it's a global sex education programme. the Scottish teachers have been told to base their framework and their policies around UNICEF and the World Health Organisation. In the Scottish teaching documents, there's links to UNICEF and the World Health Organisation. Right, so UNICEF is a global sex education. It's the sexualisation of children. It's children and sexuality. So UNICEF get framework and policies, and UNICEF also has beliefs that there's 3 fundamental developmental stages of sexualisation of your children, and the whole 3 of them are under 5 years old. Right, so this is what your Scottish sex education programme's based on. It's based on sexualising children for 3 years old. So under it, so the Scottish Government, so far since they've brought in this health and wellbeing, right, this is the Scottish Government so far, since they've brought it in, since they've started setting up relationship, sexual health and parenthood in all your classes throughout Scotland. If it's not happened yet in your schools, it's down to your head teachers. But this is the part. Scotland have no teaching materials for this. So the teachers have all been informed to use whatever materials they can gather for the internet and create their own relationship, sexual health and parenthood programme and teach what they think as a teacher is appropriate for that child's development stage. So if your child's 3 and he's talking about sex, the teacher finds appropriate material to teach your 3-year-old, right? Whether it be masturbating, whether it be, it's disgusting, right? This is a serious safeguarding issue for children in Scotland. So already, since this has been brought in, the Scottish Government have made it legal for 4-year-olds in Scotland to change their name and gender and use a different toilet. There's a newspaper article about that, guys, in the Daily Mail, right? So there's a newspaper article in the Daily Mail, and it's Scotland will let pupils change gender age 4 without their parents' consent, and tells teachers not to question a child's request to choose a new name or use a different toilet. So they don't need your parental consent for that already for 4 years old. So the sinister part of that is they'll go with it. If your wee boys want to be a wee girl, then there's so much more sinister stuff. I've read all the policy and framework. They've been encouraged when they're teaching relationships, sexual health and parenthood to bring in school nurses and healthcare professionals and stuff. And like I said, that's because under all this, they'll start treating your children for sexually transmitted diseases in school without your parental knowledge or consent. They'll start allowing your child to make gender transformation and take hormone blockers without your parental knowledge and consent, but they need medical professionals in the school. You have no idea where they're going with this. It's until you research it, and if you've got children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, you have got a duty. This is sinister. The SNP government are fucking paedophiles. And it's just, the stuff they're getting away with is unbelievable. So, as I said, they've made it legal for 4-year-olds already under it. The Health and Wellbeing Curriculum for Excellence, where mandatory sex education will be brought in. So under the Health and Wellbeing Curriculum for Excellence, if you look into all the documents and stuff, it explains how it just goes on about your child's right to an education, but that's a sex education. So the minute your children get sexual rights, as of next year under this, you lose parental rights. You have no say over your children's comprehensive sex education for 3 years old. So if you think your child's been sexualised too fast, you basically don't have a say in it by next year, and it's out of your control. And also, if you complain about it by next year when the legislations and the whole framework and they've got it up and runnings in place, then you will have local authorities like social work at your door saying that you are a bad parent for denying your child sexual rights, whether you believe in it or not. But right now, Scotland, we have a chance, guys. We have a chance to put a fucking stop to this. And we're running away more than any other country. Like, the Scottish Government are just, I don't know, they're lawless. Like, they're absolutely lawless. They're raping the minds of every child in Scotland. They're removing the innocence of children. Like, do you not see that as, like, alarming? children's innocence is being removed forever. You will never meet another innocent child or 3 years old. Like, do you feel alright about that? Because that's far from alright. If you ask me, that's the worst, scariest thing ever. Like, that's much more scarier than COVID, that your Scottish government decided that, well, they put us into lockdown, they were creating a new health and wellbeing curriculum when they were apparently didn't even know what they were doing with a pandemic, but they were putting all these legislations and powers in place and incorporating sex education into nearly every subject in your children's school for 3 years old. Like, do you not see how sinister that is? Where everybody else was worried about COVID and vaccines and God knows what, your Scottish government were sitting down, passing and teaching materials and fucking handouts and all these and sex questionnaires and shit the whole of the 2 years that we've all been in lockdown and shit. And if it's no bad enough that your child's lost in education, they've completely changed it all to gather information on your child, to profile them and to store all that information and data for research purposes. Your children are massive research purposes. Like, that's all your children are to the Scottish Government. They're research. They're an experiment and they're research. So, as I said, the SNP are making a move to remove your parental rights over your child's sex education. Teachers are being informed to use resources available and create their own Rshp lessons. So every school will be different and it's down to the teacher. It's not even down to the head teacher to pick the teaching materials. It's down to the teacher. Safeguarding this, you look at the amount of paedophiles that have been in schools that are teachers. Like, it's just sick. It's sinister. They're not following any of the protocols and guidelines that they brought out. They're meant to inform all the parents of what they're doing. They're not. They're going behind your backs. They're gathering data and information on your children that's inappropriate. And it's sinister because then they've got a profile on your child and the local authorities can make a move if you disagree with anything. I also put out there was teaching documents last year for when the children came back from a pandemic, and it was safeguarding. The teachers all went on a course in Scotland for 3 months, and it was to spot activist children and to take children aside and ask them questions about their family and home life over the last 2 years, and then to follow safeguarding protocols to remove your children. So, like, if you have disagreements in the home, it's all data gathering right now by local authorities, by charities that are claiming to support you. It's just profiling by the Scottish Government to find out what everybody's believing and what everybody isn't. So, teachers have to just pick it themselves. So, like I said, UNISECO, right, is the framework and what the guidance the teachers have been told to go and look to create these teaching bloody subjects, like to create a whole subject, of to put materials all together and create it themselves. So I'm guessing in Scotland, it'll be the teacher that creates the best material and gets away with it, that gets chosen. But right now we don't have one. It's just a big experiment and the teachers have to do what they like, literally. Weigh your children's minds, weigh your children's emotions, psychologically affecting and putting stuff in your children's minds forever. And there's already been proof, guys, that there's psychological effects and damages and children aren't coping with this. There's already been a rise on children needing psychological support, and there's no fucking wonder. Like I said, where's the safeguarding? What about children that have been sexually abused and they start getting taught about sex in school and disclose stuff? They're young and they're innocent. They have to go through that whole primary school with the children of disclosed personal private information where nobody's safeguarding them. The teachers aren't qualified. The teachers don't know what they're doing. They're being groomed by this paedophile Scottish Government to become perpetrators. The Scottish Government are grooming teachers right now to accept this shit. And if the teachers accept it, then yous are doing the jobs of the paedophiles and removing the innocence of innocent children all across Scotland. So like I said, teachers have to base their policies and framework for this education in UNISECO's guidelines and the World Health Organisation. So UNISECO believes that children should have sexual rights from birth, right? UNISECO's policy and framework is built on Dr. Kinsey's reports. There's a book about Kinsey and his research. So for anybody that doesn't know about Kinsey, I'm not going to go into everything. But this is what UNISECO's built their framework and all what their beliefs and whatever on his research, right? Now, part of his research is he paid paedophiles to gather information on children. There's another document I'll need to get and show you one time. I'll put it up on here. So, and it was experiments carried out by Kinsey, well, the paedophiles that he paid, right? And it was to make a table, right? The table that I had was the infant males. And the experiments were carried out for, the youngest was 5 months old, and it was to see how many orgasms in a set amount of time frame that the baby could have. For 5 months old all the way up to 14 years, and one of them was 24 hours. They tortured a child to find out how many orgasms they could have. This is fucking horrific, right? So he based all his research and his writings and all that on all the stuff that he paid these paedophiles to experiment on children. And this is where the global sex education comes from. And it's about sexualising children for the paedophiles. There's no other way to put it. And basically all the paedophiles' problems go away, and your children are a massive experiment in how this will go, and keeping data and constant log and analysis on what's happening with the children, how they're coping, what are they doing now. So it's fucked up. The Scottish Government are absolute paedophiles. So, as I said, so it's based on UNICEF and the World Health Organisation, Kinsey's research. Teachers have been encouraged to incorporate relationship, sexual health and parenthood across the curriculum, so across the whole health and wellbeing curriculum. They have to try and incorporate the sex education into every single subject. And that's so once that's done, it can't be removed, because you need to then look at removing the whole health and wellbeing curriculum for excellence, which is the whole education, the new whole education system. So you're fighting against the whole education in every single subject, innit? Because they want to incorporate it into, so say like primary 1 maths, will be counting sections of the pride flag. That's the sex education in maths. And then the children at 5 all get taught what the pride flag is, right? So it's one thing to be supporting of LGBT, right, because and I've got loads of friends, but it's another thing if force it upon the minds of young, fragile babies and vulnerable children, right, who have no idea or understanding, and they're only going to be able to until they have the actual feelings during puberty. So the people of Scotland have a duty to start protecting the children of Scotland. The Scottish Government are paedophiles, and they're raping the minds of your children, and they're a massive experiment. They don't care if they break them and children can't cope, and that they're left vulnerable and to paedophiles and etc, and to predators. They don't give a shit. They're experimenting, and it's global. So they have to gather research and data on your children, and they have to store it and keep it, and they have to share it globally. Like, that's part of the deal. So the first part is all I want to show you tonight, guys, is the sex questionnaire, the survey by the Scottish Government, right? So this is the Scottish Government will not consider withdrawing the controversial sex survey. So there is, let me see if I got it here. Yep, there is, these are the councils sending out the survey. So you have Glasgow City, Perth and Kinross, Stirling, North Ayrshire, Angus, South Ayrshire, Clackmanshire and Dundee, sending out the survey in a censored form, City of Edinburgh Council. So they're all the councils that are going to be sending out this questionnaire to your children. The police complaint that was put in last Monday, well, the police have said there's no crime. So they've looked at it and there's no crime. So this is the questions the Scottish Government are going to be asking your children, right? During the past year, 12 months, how many people have you had sexual intercourse with? By sexual intercourse, we mean vaginal or anal sex, right? So also they're classing, in all these questions, are classing vaginal and anal sex as the same, in the same category. For wee girls, that isn't. The school shouldn't be teaching your daughter that anal sex is just as normal as vaginal sex. Like, that's no part of sex education. That's paedophilia, right? That's crossing a line. Right, let me see what other questions. The most recent time you had penetrative vaginal sex, Which of these forms of contraception did you use? People have varying degrees of sexual experience. How much of any sexual experience have you had? And a list of options. The most recent time you had vaginal or anal sex, did you use a condom? The most recent time you had penetrative vaginal sex, did you do anything to prevent the pregnancy? How old were you when you had sex for the first time? How old were you when you had sex for the first time? 13 years or younger, and then obviously a list. Like, how dare the local authorities ask your child when they lost their virginity? Like I said, when you first had sex, would you personally say you wanted it to happen earlier? You wanted it to happen at that time? You would rather have had it later? You did not ask yourself that? Like, why do they need to know all this personal information about your children? Did you drink alcohol or drugs before you had sex for the first time? And then, like I said, for secondary school, they're using a jar of Nutella and a banana to promote anal sex. They show children a picture of somebody having sex from behind and the one in front's hanging in a Zimmer frame. So what is that teaching secondary school children? Like, an older person in a Zimmer frame and the person's having sex from behind, is the images getting shown? What about children with learning difficulties? What about children that can't comprehend that properly and think when they see an old person in a Zimmer frame they have to bend the mirror and have anal sex with them? The Scottish Government are fucking sick. Like, this is honestly sick. You've no idea how sick this shit is. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you these and I'm going to read some of them out, guys, and let you take pictures yourself. You need to look into this. You need to look at who'll be holding all this information and storing this data on your children, and who'll be able to view it and who'll be able to see it, and look into the whole sex education programme. Right, so I'm going to see how this works out, right, with the camera. Sorry. Right, so if you can screenshot that somehow, let me see, we'll hold it up here in the light. It's only, can we hold the camera up this way? No, it's locked. Right, so this is, I'm going to just let you see the pages, right? And try and screenshot it. You can go and look at the actual pages yourself. But I'm briefly going to read. This is who'll be storing the information and who'll be... That's no use, guys, so I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I need to find a better way of getting these for you. I'll just show you the front pages, right? You can screenshot them and look at them yourselves. And then I'll read some of them out. So if you have children in school, you need to read these. You need to go, make it your duty to read what your children are about to be taught and what that means. Scottish Government Education Analytical Services, information we obtain and hold about your children. So I'm just giving you the front pages, guys, and you can go and look at the documents yourselves. I'll find the websites at the bottom, zoom in, screenshot them and zoom in. The personal data to be processed, so this is what they want on your child, right? Your child's Scottish candidate number, your child's school identifier, your child's attitude to school. I'll read all these out in a wee minute. Yeah, I'll let you have a screenshot. There's that idiot back again, that troll that I need to block. How do we block somebody? Put user in timeout. Hide it on this channel. Right, hopefully. Why do you get so many trolls on YouTube? That's why I hate YouTube. Data sharing for additional research. And this is all the data your schools will be gathering under this health and wellbeing curriculum and the sex education. So I'm going to just read you some of it out, guys, before I go, and you can go and look it up yourselves. Maybe it was that way. Maybe not. I need to get better with technology. They're getting there. Maybe not. I'm a bit squint, but who cares? Nearly done. So I'm just going to read some of this, guys, right? And let you know who will be looking at your children's data. The questions that I've just told you. There's other questions that will be asked for primary 5. I couldn't get into them because I need a Scottish candidate number. So I'll read this just slightly, right? So this was a template last updated in August 2021. The purpose of this document is to report and assess against any potential privacy resulting from collection data on the health and wellbeing of children as part of the National Health and Wellbeing Census. The data is to be collected and owned by Scottish local authorities and grant-aided schools. So any schools that the Scottish Government pay grants to, there's that troll again. And what was I going to say there? So the data that they collect will be owned by the local authorities, which is your councils. So like Glasgow City Council, who's issuing it. So like Glasgow City Council, Perth and Kinross Council, Stirling Council, North Rshp. So all the council members will have access to your children's data. All the local authorities and the Scottish Government. Health and Wellbeing Consensus from 2021 to 2022 school year. Data to be collected by 32 local authorities and grant-aided schools for research and statistical analysis and shared and held by the Scottish Government for national reporting within the National Improvement Framework and Improvement Plan, the global sex education and sexualisation of your children. So description of the project. The activity will make improvements to the data collection landscape around the health and wellbeing of children in Scotland. Relevant data collections have been set up by individual local authorities. So they've already set up data collection places and health boards, but so the disparity of these approaches and collecting, they've not quite got it proper yet. So from 2021 to 22, all primary 5 to S6 children in publicly funded primary, secondary and grant-aided schools in Scotland are invited to take part in the census. Questions will focus, that's what the questions I was reading you, on the children's self-reporting of their health and wellbeing across a range of topics and themes. There are different questions for different pupil stages. Delivery of the consensus and the extract arrangements around it will be the responsibility of the individual, local authority and grant-aided schools, but it is envisaged that children and young people, local authority and grant-aided schools will take part in the census. During the class contact time and will access, so during class, so how are you going to have control when it's during class? So how can you tell your child not to consent when they're going to be given in class and have to make a choice herself? So during class contact time and will access the complete consensus questionnaire using the Smart Survey online data collection platform. So there's a Smart Survey online data collection platform that will be storing your children's data as well as the local authorities. Children and young people will be able to respond either on their personal computers or laptops or tablets. An opinion for paper completion may be provided by the local authorities where necessary. Any arrangements in addition to these will vary depending on local circumstances. Once the data has been collected, the local authorities and grant-aided schools should share this information with the Scottish Government's Educational Analytical Services Division, which is part of the Scottish Government's Learning Directorate, as under the National Health Service Scotland Act. Scottish ministers have a duty to promote the improvement of the physical and mental health of people in Scotland. So, like, why are they giving you all this now? Look at, they've caused a mental health pandemic in their children for the past 2 years, and they weren't giving a shit about their mental health and their well-being, right? So why have they created all that first and then created a health and well-being curriculum? Completely ripped apart the whole education system over the last 2 years to incorporate this, while no supporting children in the meantime, letting them fall apart, letting them have breakdowns, letting them have suicidal thoughts, and letting them be alone and isolated, and nobody to talk to. And now they want to know everything about them all of a sudden, like every single personal, intimate detail. Right, that in itself should ring alarm bells. So the benefit to the public of the data being shared with Scottish ministers is to help in the formulation and monitoring of national and local policies, which in turn will ultimately drive forward improvements and outcomes of Scotland's children and young people. Personal data to be processed. So this is the personal data to do with your children. Your child's Scottish candidate number, your child's school identifier, your child's attitude to school, your child's perception of achievement, your child's pressure of schoolwork, your child's physical activity, your child's eating behaviours, child's general health, child's general well-being, child's mental health, child's physical and mental condition, child's sleep pattern, child's feelings of discrimination, child's relationship with peers, child's self-perception, child's social media and online activities, child's relationship with family and environment, child's relationship with parents and carers, child's resilience, child's involvement in decision making. These are questionnaires they're going to make up to gather all of this data on your children, and the Scottish Government weren't provided with this list. Your child's involvement in decision making, your child's use of alcohol, your child's use of tobacco, child's use of drugs, child's involvement in positive activities, child's caring responsibilities, child's relationships and sexual health, child's places to play. So this data will be the data collected and processed by the Scottish Government will contain certain information on children and young people in Scottish schools, which makes the data personally identifiable. However, the Scottish Government will not be able to directly identify individual children. Either can this child's Scottish candidate number. And also, there's a part of these documents that say there's going to be another system set up by the local authorities that will hold, with the data, will hold your child's name, date of birth, and the Scottish candidate number, so your child is identified. Right, so the unique identifier will be used to link additional social, economic and characteristic information already shared by local authorities with the Scottish Government's Educational and Anical Service Division, such as the child's ethnic background, geographical area, such as Scottish Index or multiple deprivation, free school meal registration status, etc. Every single detail of your child, whether they get free school meals, so the personal information of the parents. Like I said, they want to know how your children stay at the weekends, they want to know their sleep patterns, they want to know their eating patterns, they want to know every single thing about your child. So tell me that's no profiling your children. Data sharing with the Scottish Government. Once each local authority and grant-aided school has conducted its own census, it will then share its data with the Scottish Government. Data sharing agreements will be in place between the Scottish Government and the local authorities. Once shared, the Scottish Government will become a data controller of the data it then holds for its own statistical analysis and research purposes. Local authorities will share their data with the Scottish Government's Educational and Anical Services Division using Objective Connect. Objective Connect is a UK hosted platform, so they've got all these different platforms they're storing and using your children's data in. Right, I'm not going to read all them out, you can go look at all the, I'll just read you what I think is important, right? The Scottish Government Analytical Services, right, so who are they, right? We are the Scottish Government's Educational and Anical Services, which is part of the Scottish Government's Learning Directorate. Are you allowed to ask for this personal data about my child? Yes. We have legal powers to request data with regard to health and wellbeing of the children. So they've already legislated it under the new health and wellbeing curriculum. So they can ask your children anything they want because of the sex education programme. They have broke the boundaries to be able to ask this stuff to your children. Why do you need this data about my child? We need this information about your child in order to... I'll just skip them because that's bullshit they're telling you at first. Enhance the quality of research to improve the lives of people in Scotland. Provide a window on society, the economy and on the work and performance of the government by publishing statistical publications and additional tables about school education. So they're going to publicise this data. Where do you get the data about my child? The data of your child's health and wellbeing is initially received by the local authority for conducting their own surveys with your child. So they've all got a part in it. The local authorities want to do research and analyse data on your children and know everything about them. Then the Scottish Government want it. They can then share it with researchers and charities. What data about my child's health and wellbeing is shared with you? The information about your child that is shared with and processed with the Scottish Government, and I've already read them. Your child's Scottish candidate number, your school identifier, attitude to school, sleep pattern, physical and mental health, relationship with peers, use of alcohol, tobacco, drugs, your child's relationships and sexual health, who is processing the data about my child. The source for most of the data and information is collected and held by the local authorities, so your local council. So all the people that sit in your local council, their IT staff and their admin staff will be able to view your child's information and questions, personal questions about their home life, family life, about themselves, about their sex education, about whether they're having sex or not, who they're having sex with, how many people had sex with, when did they lose their virginity, etc, etc. What I told you at the start of this video. The source for most of this data is collected by the local authorities, conducting their own surveys. So the Scottish Government have told them what to do, right, and ordered them to do it basically. But they're getting the responsibility of holding your child's data. So do you trust your local councils to have personal, private information about your child? Intimate details, when they go to sleep, when they eat, who they stay with, who they're close to, who they're not close to, who, and as I said, sexualising them. Access to any data shared by local authorities with the Scottish Government is heavily restricted to only those staff who need access to it, such as analysts within the Scottish Government's Information Management, Improvement and Evidence Unit and the IT support staff. Why the fuck would IT support staff want to know when your child lost their virginity? How is the information about my child's health and wellbeing shared with you? The transferring of individual level data between local authorities and the Scottish Government uses secure transfer systems, so by computer. How long will you keep the data about my child? Data held about your child within the Scottish Government is managed effectively by secure systems and secure servers and is exploited as a valuable corporate resource subject to confidentiality and restraints. Of course it is. They're profiling every child, finding out when their eating habits are, their sleeping patterns are, who they stay with, who they speak to, who they don't, everything about your family life, your home life, everything about their personal life, and they're sexualising them. They're going to get them to entrust them, and they're going to start telling them that it's alright to masturbate at 3 years old, and it's alright to touch each other, and I'm not even kidding you on. This is how sinister and sick this is. Like, this is a massive experiment, a global experiment on your children. It's got fuck all to do with COVID. It's about, literally, your children are being stolen right in front of you. Their innocence has been stolen forever. So, how I don't know how you're on the alarm by that, I really can't get my head around it, Scotland. Scotland need to stand up and start protecting and safeguarding their children in this country against a paedophile government who are sexualising them at an alarming rate for research purposes, for data analysis and storing stuff to see how they can sexualise all the children. As I said, I'm not going to read all these out, guys, but there is something I've missed that's important that I've missed. Why are the local authorities asking my children about their health and well-being? By law, local authorities, so like I said, the Scottish Government legislated it and brought in new laws or amended existing legislation in Scotland over the last 2 years to make it alright to ask children inappropriate questions. And they're saying it's important for the local authorities to understand the wellbeing needs of your children. So like what's been happening over the last 2 years, like what do the children need? Not they're prying and they're interfering in your family life and they want to break down the family units, which they've already done. But now it's a whole other sinister thing. They want to sexualise your children. If you've got anything to say about it, they'll start removing your children for you, because the paedophiles really have came for the children and they're already there. So what are children and young people being asked to do? Local authorities are asking local primary 5 to S6 children and young people to fill in online health and wellbeing surveys in the academic year 2022. Children and young people are being asked to complete online questionnaires during class time, and it will take around 20 to 40 minutes, and that's in all the different areas that I told you about, as well as the inappropriate questions. The local authorities have asked children. Are the local authorities allowed to ask children? Yes, the local authorities are required by law to plan for children's services in their local area. So they've brought in under the health and wellbeing that they need to plan they need to make a 3-year plan every 3 years for children in the area now under the health and wellbeing. But they weren't bothered about your children for 2 years. They weren't bothered about their mental health. They weren't bothered about their education. Now they're really concerned and they need to learn about sex really fast, and all the local authorities and everybody needs to know the progress. Right, so that's just a load of lies. That's topics the children will be asked about, like your attitude to school, perception of achievement, your eating behaviours, general health, general well-being, mental health, sleep pattern, feelings of discrimination, relationships with your family and friends, relationships with your family and environment, relationships with parents and carers, like just everything, the use of alcohol, drugs, tobacco, do you have sex or no? Now, this is like the Scottish Government profiling your children and gathering a profile on them. They're 3 years old and they know more about your children's sexual development and their health than you do. They know more about your child than they do, and they're sexualising your children. Like I said, school teachers have been groomed to sexualise children for the Scottish Government. So if you agree to do it without looking at UNICEF and how it's based on Kinsey's work and research and how he paid paedophiles to see how many orgasms 5-month-old babies could have in a certain amount of period of time, and then wrote books and research on it about sexuality and health in children. So this is the conduct. There's a document, Scottish Government document, conduct of relationships, sexual health and parenthood education. So I'm not going to read it all again, guys. You can go, relationship, sexual health education is a key part of the health and wellbeing within curriculum for excellence. Education focusing on equipping children and young people with knowledge, skills and values to make informed and positive choices about forming relationships. So, like I said, this is all bullshit, so I'm not even going to read it. Really, it's about your children, that the Scottish Government fucking with them and researching on them and doing experiments on them. And that's why they're allowed to change their gender for 4 years old. They're confusing your children for a young age. It's easier to abuse and control children that are fucked up, and that is basically what they're doing. They're going to mess with the minds of your children till your children are so confused. By the time they're going through puberty, they won't know if they're a boy or a lassie or what it is, what's happening. And look at the state of America with all the gender transformation, like all the children. 80% of children change their mind by puberty in America. So after they've experimented with it all, children have been going through hormone blockers in primary school for 4 years old, wanting gender transformation fucking operations and interference and hormone blockers and stuff, messing with hormones of children for a very young age. That's removing the rights of your child. That's removing human rights. Like, the government are fucking massively experimenting on children and changing their genders. Like, changing their genders and sexualising your children for 3 years old is just a whole new level. Like, people in Scotland need to wake up to this. You need to go research it and look at what they've done to your children's education in the last 2 years. When really, if you really think they're concerned about a pandemic, where would they have found all the time to do that? Where would they have found all the time to sit down and agree to all this and incorporate it into every single subject and change the whole education system and pass documents and questionnaires? So if they were that busy with COVID, how the fuck would they have found the time to do this? Like, you have serious questions you need to ask yourself. This is not about, the global pandemic is paedophiles have made a move on your children. They want to break down family units and destroy yous, and they want access to your children to do massive experiments on them, sexualising them, doing what the fuck they like with them. And that's really what it's all about. And the local authorities all know every single intimate detail about your household, when you all go to sleep, when you wake up, what you eat for dinner, like who your children talk to, who they don't talk to. Like, that's stalking. That's a whole new level of fucking stalking. There's a difference between going to school and creating a full profile on your children where there's data protection issues, where it's shared with the whole local authorities or the councils, their IT staff, researchers, charities, the Scottish Government, all the different processes and departments in the Scottish Government that it will go through. And then also it's shared globally with the United Nations for research and data analysis on when they put it all together and see what's happening across all the schools, because they're all doing it. They're all doing it this year, every single school. And also, as I said, America's involved. America started it first. So you can just go look at the state of what they've done to children in that country. It's absolutely sickening. And it's just sinister as fuck, guys, and you need to educate yourselves on this. It's a serious, serious child protection issue. Scotland is about to rape the minds of all your children with a paedophile global sex education programme. They're already proving it with the questionnaires that they're firing out to your children, asking them when they lost their virginity and shit. Like, they're ruthless. They don't give a shit. And in amongst all this, your children have been in a pandemic with everything else going on, and they're not interested in asking them questions about that and how they've coped with that. But they want to know about their sex lives and whether they've had anal sex or not, or whether they've had oral sex and when they lost their virginity. Like, so I think you need to sit down and ask yourself why, guys, right? So I'm going to go and leave yous with that. And love yous lots and take care and keep your children safe. And honestly, if it was me the new guys, I would have my wains out of school.